All right, we're in 2 Kings chapter number 8. And we're going to see some more miracles here of Elisha and what God tells him to do. And, because without God, they wouldn't have known what to do. So, but God gives him the ability. It's nothing through himself. It's through what God's doing through him. So, but beginning in verse 1, then spake Elisha unto the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise, and go thou and thine household, and sojourn wheresoever thou canst sojourn, for the Lord hath called for a famine, and it shall also come upon the land 7 years. So, and this was the Shunammite woman that he asked her what would she want him to do for her, and she said she didn't have a child, and so she had a child, and then that child died, but Elisha, through God, raised him from the dead. And this is the same lady. And, God had shared with them, and we see really a vast change from one chapter to the next here. Because, back at the end of chapter 6 and beginning in chapter 7, there was a famine in the land at that point. And then Elisha, at the beginning of chapter 7, told them that the next day, about the same time, that they'd have plenty. And so now, here they are, not too long down the road. They've already forgotten what God had done for them. They'd already, just started just doing whatever they wanted instead of trusting God. And so God had called for another famine. God had called for something, a judgment, to hopefully get their attention. And, it's just like, I believe with all my heart, a lot of the things that we're seeing and have seen over the past few years with, the hurricanes that we've seen, how strong they are, and so many tornadoes, and back at the beginning of this year, normally Kansas and Oklahoma has more tornadoes than any other states in the nation, but Georgia had more than any other state for quite some time. But with all that and the wildfires and earthquakes, and I believe God's trying to get our attention. We just see one thing right after another, and we better wake up, because God could send a judgment on this land that would, it would wake people up, because we really haven't seen things like what we are seeing here in scriptures, judgments that God allowed to come on Israel. But we may not ever think this could happen, but we may think, well, our country is so powerful and so great that there's nobody could ever conquer us, but we better be careful. Israel, God's chosen people. God allowed them to be taken into captivity several times because of disobedience, because of neglecting Him, turning their back on Him. So, they've forgotten what God has done for them, and here we've got another famine, but Elisha tells this lady, because this lady is special to him. And not only to him, to God too, because she had helped take care of the man of God. So Elisha told her, you need to get your household and go someplace else for a while. And he told her that this was going to last for 7 years, so she's going to leave for 7 years. And the woman arose and did after the saying of the man of God, and she went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years. So, she knew this man was a man of God. She knew that, you know what, if he's talking about a famine, it's probably not going to be real easy. So she packed up and got to the land of the Philistines. And I think sometimes maybe people hear Philistines and they kind of want to relate it to Palestinians, but the Philistines had a homeland. But you know what? The Palestinians that are wanting part of Israel today, they've really never had a homeland in the Middle East. Other than when, God allowed Israel to be scattered after the year AD 70, when I think it was Nero came in and he destroyed Jerusalem and burned all kind of stuff, homes, houses, whatever, and temple, and he just destroyed everything. And it scattered all the Jewish people. And now they were gone for nearly 2,000 years out of their land. And they didn't go back into their land until 1948. So, and that's why the Palestinians claim that land. But that still was not their land, even though they moved in on it after God allowed a judgment to come on them. Just because they moved into that land, that didn't make it theirs. That's what God had promised Israel. So, but, she goes to the land of the Philistines for 7 years. And it came to pass at the 7 years' end that the woman returned out of the land of the Philistines, and she went forth to cry unto the king for her house and for her land. So see, just the short time, and 7 years is, we look at it, that's a pretty good little bit, but it's not a real long time. That short space of time of 7 years, somebody had already moved into her home and taken over her land. And so she's going to the king to petition him to get her home and her land back. Because God had given each of them land, a parcel of land. And, it could not be taken away from them. Now, they could sell it, but, they could only, whoever they sold it to could only keep it for 7 years. And then they couldn't charge them anything. They just had to give it back to them at the end of that 7 years. Because the 7 years that they would have the land, they were either growing crops on it, using the vineyards that was on it, whatever. They were making money off the land. So that was their payment, for having the land, for buying it from their brothers, sisters, whoever. So now, she just goes because of the famine. And because Elisha had told her, you need to pack up and go. He was taking care of us. This lady had taken care of him. So, but now she's going to the king and she's wanting her land. And the king talked with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, tell me, I pray thee, all the great things that Elisha hath done. So, here's this lady, she's wanting to petition the king for her house and land. So he begins to ask Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, what's some things that he's done? And one of the things he's going to share. And it came to pass, as he was telling the king how that he had restored a dead body to life, that behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life cried to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, my lord, O king, this is the woman, and that is her son whom Elisha restored to life. So you think God working on both ends of that? He was. Here's the king asking Gehazi what some great things that he had done. Okay? Here comes this lady to the king. She's going to petition for her land and house back. And what's Gehazi doing? He's telling about the great thing that Elisha had done in restoring her son to life. He said, hey, I'm telling you the story, and right here they are walking in. This is the lady, and this is the young man. God's good. God knows exactly what to do. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed unto her a certain officer, saying, restore all that was hers, and all the fruits of the field since the day that she left the land, even until now. So, I'm sending some soldiers with you. You're going to get the land and your house back. Whatever crops that it has drawn since you've been gone, you're going to be restored for all that. How amazing. God will take care of those that are his. And no doubt this lady was one of his, because God knew her. God knew that she was the one that was taking care of his anointed. We can be extremely blessed, and that, when I say that, I'm not meaning in money and houses and all this kind of stuff. But you know what? If we are one to be known to help God's people, you know what? God will bless us. And I'm not just saying Jews, I'm just saying any of God's people. If we know they're in need, if we know whatever. Hey, they're hungry, we're going to take some food to them. They're thirsty, we're going to give them something to drink. They need clothing, we're going to give them some clothing. If we know of anybody right now that, and I know we got a pile of stuff over there for a yard sale, but you know what? If we knew of a family or even just an individual that had a need of clothing, and we've got all that over there and we couldn't help them, what kind of church are we? So, we need to help God's people. And I tell you what, God will bless us. Guaranteed. There's not a doubt in my mind, God will bless us. And that, God is blessing this lady. The king says, you're going to be restored to everything, plus what fruits it's grown for these 7 years. So, how amazing. And Elisha came to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, was sick. And it was told him, saying, the man of God is come hither. Now, it hadn't been a chapter or so back where Ben-Hadad was wanting to kill Elisha. And now, he's sick, and somebody tells him, hey, you know what? The man of God is coming through this area. We've seen him. And the king said unto Hazael, take a present in thine hand and go, meet the man of God, and inquire of the Lord by him, saying, shall I recover of this disease? So he's telling Hazael, go and take this man a present. And we're going to see how large a present he's going to take here in just a second. But he says, go and take this man a present and ask him, am I going to make it through this sickness? Am I going to recover? Am I going to get well? So Hazael went to meet him and took a present with him, even of every good thing of Damascus, 40 camels burden. So what it would take for 40 camels to haul. That's the present he's taken to Elisha, just to ask him, is this man going to recover? And when we hear his answer, it seems kind of odd the way he says it, but we'll find out in a minute why he says it this way. But he took 40 camels' burden of a present and came and stood before him and said, Thy son Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, hath sent me to thee, say, Shall I recover of this disease? And, he's doing exactly what the king had asked him. Go and ask Elisha. It's amazing to me how that he's wanting counsel really from Elisha, but here a few days before he's wanting to kill him. But when we get in trouble, most of the time people will turn just about to anybody that they think might could help them. Even if it is, they feel like it's their worst enemy. If they feel like hey, go ask them if they could help me. And that's what Ben-Hadad has done. He asked him, shall he recover of this disease?
Come out here. Come out here.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Go back over there where you grab me.
Well,
Go.
I need a chair. I have a chair.
Okay, go that way. Okay, so, he's about to get in trouble. He asked him, shall I recover from this disease? And in verse 10, and Elisha said unto him, Go, say unto him, Thou mayest certainly recover, howbeit the Lord hath showed me that he shall surely die. So, Elisha sounds like he's saying, really two different things here. He's going to recover, but then God's revealed to me he's going to die. So what's he saying? Well, we'll see a few verses down why Elisha says it like this. He says, Thou mayest certainly recover. So he's telling him, hey, you know what? The sickness you have, you're going to recover from it. It's not a sickness to death. But then he says, the Lord revealed to me that you surely will die. And he settled his countenance steadfastly until he was ashamed, and the man of God wept. Now, why do you think the man of God wept? Why do you think Hazael was ashamed? It's been a good while back. You remember Elijah? A good while back in Elijah's ministry, he had already anointed Hazael as king of Syria. God had already told him to anoint him king. But he hasn't gained that position yet. So we're seeing here that Elisha's saying, you're not going to die from the sickness, but God says you're surely going to die. And it's because of Hazael. And we're going to see what he's going to do here in just a second. So, Hazael was ashamed, and then, Elisha knew. God had already shared with him what was going to happen. And Elisha wept because, it wasn't right. But Hazael was not a good person. And Hazael said, Why weepeth my Lord? And he answered, Because I know the evil that thou wilt do unto the children of Israel. He's telling him, I know the evil that you're going to do to the children of Israel. He says, Their strongholds wilt thou set on fire, and their young men wilt thou slay with the sword, and wilt dash their children, and rip up their women with child. So, Elisha knows that this man is going to become king. because the sickness that Ben-Hadad has got is not something that's really death-worthy. But he says, I know you're going to die. So, and, he's weeping because he knows how evil Hazael is going to be. And Hazael said, but what? Is thy servant a dog that he should do this great thing? And Elisha answered, the Lord hath showed me that thou shalt be king over Syria. So, Elisha didn't even know that Elijah had already anointed him as king. God showed him at this point that, Hazael is going to be the next king of Syria. But he knows, and Hazael is asking Elisha, do you think I'm a dog? You think I'm that wicked? And Elisha knows he is, because he's already shared with him what he's going to do. You're going to do evil to the children of Israel. So it's pretty bad. So he departed from Elisha and came to his master, who said to him, what saith Elisha to thee? And he answered, he told me that thou shouldest surely recover. And that's part of what he said. He's going to recover. And it came to pass on the morrow that he took a thick cloth and dipped it in water and spread it on his face so that he died. And Hazael reigned in his stead. So basically, Hazael caused the death of Ben-Hadad. He took this thick cloth, wet it down good with water, put it over his face. He died. Smothered. Maybe he was breathing all this water in out of it and drowned. But he died. And Hazael is the one that caused his death. That's why Elisha told him, he's going to recover, but yet he's going to die. Because he knew how evil Hazael was. God had shown him, this man's going to be the next king of Syria. God had shown him how evil he was going to be to Israel, to the people of Israel, to the women, children, the men. This was an evil man. So he departed. No, I've already read that. Never mind. But he took the thick cloth and he died, and Hazael reigned in his stead. And in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoshaphat being the king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, began to reign. And some of these names kind of run together. They, look the same, but just a little different spelling. But Joram was the son of Ahab, and we know he was evil. So, but now we have, Joram was the king over Israel, but Jehoshaphat, king over Judah, and then Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, was going to take over Judah. 32 years old was he when he began to reign, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. So Jehoram, he only reigned 8 years. I like reading history and stuff, and I look at, some of these folks, some of the kings were fairly young people when they became king. Some of them were children. But, a lot of them didn't reign for very many years at the time. God can get enough of evil. And you know, I've got in this book, I hardly ever read anything in here out of it, but on one page here, it shares about all the kings between Israel and Judah. And it lists the two lists. Judah had 20 kings, and Israel only had 19. But the ones that Israel had, every one of them, their character was bad. Every one of them. Now, in Judah, out of 20, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They had 8 total out of the 20 that were considered good, that did that was good in the sight of the Lord. The other 12 did that was evil in the sight of the Lord. So exactly what God had told them about wanting a king over them came to pass. God told them, you're not going to want that. It's not going to be good for you, but that's what they wanted. So, but yet, you know, here we have these, and, you know, Jehoram only reigns for 8 years. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, as did the house of Ahab, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord. So here's one of the evil kings of Judah, Jehoram. You know, so, and one of the reasons that he had done evil, you know, he's married Jezebel and Ahab's daughter, which he should have never married, because God told them not to intermarry with Gentiles. Here was a lady, their daughter, Jezebel and Ahab's daughter, she was half and half. She was half Jewish and half Gentile. So, you know, he should never have married her, but he did. And it's any time, and probably if you went and did research on it, and you looked, if you had everything laid out to where you could see, if somebody that is a Christian marries somebody that's worldly, more times than not, that a lot of them, I've heard people say before, well, I'll marry them, and I'll help convert them, I'll help bring them to Jesus. But you know what? That don't happen a lot of times. Most of the time it never happens. Most of the time what happens is that non-Christian pulls the Christian away from God. Because, you know, they're just going to pitch a fit till they get their way or whatever it is. But, you know, that's what will happen more times than not. They'll pull the God-fearing person away from God. And that's what God knew. That's why God told them not to intermarry. And now look at Jehoram. What's he doing? That was evil in the sight of the Lord. So, and a lot of it was because of who he had married. Yet the Lord would not destroy Judah for David his servant's sake, as he promised him to give him always a light and to his children. So, you know, God is one, when he makes a promise, he's not going back on that promise. It's just like God's promised us, if we'll live for Jesus Christ, if we'll make him our Savior, if we'll accept him into our life and live for him, we've got a huge promise. And God's not going back up on that promise. We're going to live with him in heaven one day. So God told David that he would not let it come to pass that there would not be somebody from the seed of David on the throne. God, because of what was taking place with Jehoram, God could have destroyed Judah, but he didn't, because of the promise that he had made to David. See how wonderful God is? God doesn't forget his promises. You know, we and it's sad, but we as humans, we make promises a lot of times, and we go on down the road a little ways, we done forgot what we promised. We're not going to fulfill that promise. Even if somebody comes up and reminds us of it, I'm done with that. You know, but, you know, God is one that if he makes a promise, praise God, he's going through with that promise. You know what? God wants us to be the same way, really. Because it's just like I've shared a bunch of times. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon said, it's better not to make a vow than to make one and break it. You know, God gets upset with that. You know, that was one thing that happened to Saul, the first king. You know, Joshua had made a covenant or a vow with people that God had told him not to. And I forget which group of people right off the top of my head. But he made a vow with them. And he told his people what, you know, they had come and made it look like they had traveled for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles, and they'd only traveled from right down the road to them so that they wouldn't kill them. They received them. They made their bread and everything. Their clothing looked old and raggedy. They brought molded bread just so it looked like, man, these people have traveled a long way. All they got molded bread. But when Joshua found out that, hey, you know what, this is people from right down the road, he said, we've made this covenant with them, we're going to stick to it. And that's what God wanted them to do. But when Saul became king, what did he do? He went in there and tried to kill every one of them. And you know, that cost him. So God does not want us backing up on promises that we make, even though we do a lot of times.
I try not to promise Annie Brand or something. It'll be, you know,
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks or something like that ahead, you know. And I said, no, I don't promise you nothing. We'll just have to wait and see.
I remember years ago when I wasn't a Christian, making promises, this, that, and the other to folks, and then just, you know, I'm done with it. But, you know, since I've become a Christian, I've still failed. Now, don't get me wrong. But I try my best to do what I say. I don't want to tell somebody something and then not do it. Now, I know sometimes, you know, sickness may come up, whether it's yourself or somebody in your family or whatever. I mean, you know, sometimes there's things that's excusable, you know, but we can still take care of it down the road, you know, where we can fulfill that promise. But we don't need to make a promise and not keep it. Verse 20. In his days, Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah and made a king over themselves. So, you know, God did not want a division with Israel and Judah, but he knew it was going to happen. So, but, you know, things happen, but, you know, God already knows. So Joram went over to Zaire, and all the chariots with him, and he rose by night and smote the Edomites, which compassed him about, and the captains of the chariots, and the people fled into their tents. Yet Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah unto this day. Then Libnah revolted at the same time. So, you know, we had divisions, we had folks wanting to break away and do their own thing, but, you know, God doesn't like division. God is not the author of confusion whatsoever. And the rest of the acts of Joram and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? And Joram slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Ahaziah, his son, reigned in his stead. So and, you know, we're gonna read more about these folks when we get to 1st and 2nd Chronicles. You know, as, you know, when we were going through 1st and 2nd Samuel, you know, if you remember I shared that, you know, we're gonna hear a lot of these same things over and over, but a little different detail with each time we hear it. So, but we're gonna hear about these folks again. But Joram died, and he was buried with his fathers in the city of David, which is Bethlehem. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, did Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, begin to reign. 22 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri, king of Israel. So, you know, he was a good while back. But, you know, he only reigned 1 year in Jerusalem, Ahaziah. So some of them had really short times of being king. But then, you know, with the change of families of being kings, even though it stayed in the same lineage, there was a lot of turmoil when it changed hands. So, and you know, a lot of times, and in other countries, other families eventually took over, like in countries in Europe. There were several times that one family was king and queen, passing it down their lineage. They would be overthrown, and then another family would take over. So it happened a bunch of times. But he only reigned 1 year. And he walked in the way of the house of Ahab. See, here we go again. He walked in the way of the house of Ahab and did evil in the sight of the Lord, as did the house of Ahab, for he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. So, you know, Jehoram married into that family when he should not have. He should not have married that lady. A lot of times these fellows got married without seeking God, or, you know, really even know, they probably knew who they were and that they were not really should be marrying them, but, you know, lust a lot of times kicks in there and this kind of stuff. So, but, you know, he did that was evil in the sight of the Lord, and that's bad. But again, between the two, the divided Israel and Judah, you know, they only had, out of 39 kings, they only had 8 kings that were good. If you combine both sets of kings, 39 kings between them, and they only had 8 good ones. Now that's not too good of a record. And he went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to war against Hazael, king of Syria, in Ramoth Gilead, and the Syrians wounded Joram. You know, God can allow things to happen to you when you're not doing what he wants you to do. When you're doing evil against his people. So, and King Joram went back to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him at Ramoth. So, you know, he traveled back to the city of Jezreel, and, you know, to be worked on, to be doctored up, to be, you know, recuperate. When he fought against Hazael, king of Syria, you know, he received all those wounds. And Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel, because he was sick. So, you know, we've got all these folks that were doing evil and then teaming up together, and then, you know, going down and arming up with them, doing all these things, and And yet, you know, hey, he's sick, we're gonna go down there and visit with him. Even though he's evil, we're gonna go visit with him. You know, they should have been on their knees calling out to God. They should have been seeking Elisha to help them to do what God wanted them to do. But, you know, we pretty quick after the home and the land was given back to the Shumanite woman, you know, we don't hear any more good from them all the way to the end of this chapter. There was no good going on. It was pretty much evil. So, you know, it's sad that even in the day and hour we live in, people can get caught up in evil, think they're having a good time. I mean, you know, I keep seeing all this stuff on TV. You know, these kids that on a bridge threw a 6-pound rock and killed a young father when it went through the windshield of his car. You know, how sad. Then, you know, a couple of other kids going in jail because of terroristic threats against schools and this kind. I was like, Lord have mercy.
They probably won't do nothing to them boys though, but they say they could spend the rest of their life in prison.
Yeah.
But they plead not guilty.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like, how in the world could you plead not guilty? And, you know,
The one that threw the rock, he went and turned himself in, is what they said.
Yeah.
That he turned himself in and said, then they got the others.
But they think they're having fun doing this evil. And it's the same thing in the days of these folks. They thought they were having fun doing all this evil, and all the time they were ruining themselves. So if Satan gets that kind of hold on somebody, then, you know, they get in their mind, well, God will never forgive me. God don't want anything to do with me. I've done such evil. But, you know, God will forgive us of any sin. Only one sin that he won't, and that's blaspheming the Holy Spirit. So, Satan can get deep nails, I guess, into folks and have them right where he wants them at. And it's sad. Youngins and adults alike. Anybody have anything on these verses?